Hello, Jeff Robinette. You're still offshore.
Yes, sir.
How's the weather out there?
Oh man, it's actually a pretty nice today. It's probably like a high of 83, uh, 5 mile an hour winds, pretty calm seas.
Good deal. Good deal. There it goes. All right.
Hola.
Hello, you. How are you?
Good. How you doing?
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Good to see Warren with us tonight. Haven't seen you for 2 or 3 weeks.
The Hafta et Evermai, Elo, Eka, Biko, Levaka, Ubako, Nifishta, Ubako, Mordeka, Yazu, Hadvarim, Edalech, Asher, Noteke, Betsaka, Hayom, Al, Leveka, Bishiltam, Leveneka, Vidi Barta, Bam, Beshivtaka, Bevetika, Uvalektika, Vadesh Rek, Uvashashpika, Uvakolnika, Ukarshamtan, Avot Als Yadika, Yahayu, Letot Defot Ben Egnenta, Ukatavtam Al Vizut Haklot, Betaka, Uvishinarata.
Okay, I think we're just about ready to go. Um, I think I've got all my buttons pushed here that I need to push, and we do have a minion here, so I'm going to go ahead and get started, and we'll begin with our blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who sanctifies us with his commandments and commands us to engross ourselves in the words of Torah. So, all right, now I'm going to go ahead and mute everybody, and then you know the rules. If you want to say something, just unmute yourself and say away. So, tonight we're jumping into chapter 6, and let me just make sure everybody can see the shared screen and you can hear me okay.
We can hear you just fine.
Good. All right. And normally Al Sumi is my sounding board, but I think he's having dinner with one of his kids tonight, so uh, he said he wouldn't be on here. All right, so let's get going. And I left up the chart that I made up last week of the various visions that Zechariah had. And tonight we're actually going to go and finish off the visions and have the last of the visions, the final one. And this one, there are some similarities between the last vision and the first one. The first one being in chapter 1 and verse 7 to 17. And so what it's also in these things are kind of in a chiastic series or chiastic form, and so that while they're kind of interesting, it's sometimes they're kind of hard to um, look at and see exactly what they're talking about here, and this one is even more obtuse than many of them. But anyway, some of the similarities that you see here. In the first vision, Zechariah had mentioned horses of various colors, and but they didn't have any chariots, and they had riders, and so they were just in a different format. And here we've got horses, all saying with different colors, and they're pulling chariots, but there's no mention at all of riders in the chariots, and so I don't know what the reason for that is. It doesn't really say. And scene one, or vision one, is one that it appears that these guys have just come back from some kind of a mission. And then in scene 2 or vision 8, the last one, these horses and chariots seem to be going out on a new mission. So that's some of the differences and the similarities between those, the first one and the 8th vision. So let's go ahead and jump into verse 1, unless somebody had any comments or questions about where we're going on this, or what's going on right now. All right. Zechariah 6:1. Again, I lifted up my eyes, and behold, I saw 4 chariots emerging from between the 2 mountains. mountains of bronze. So put that up there. The next, and so I have this picture of these guys racing their horses, their chariots, and this was I found this one online as just something that someone had already painted up, and it was better than the AI portraits that I was trying to come up with tonight because I tried it several different ways with AI, and every time I tried, they would have uh, you know, two of the chariots would only have one horse, and the Bible clearly says the chariots and their horses, and so um, I could get anywhere from 6 to 7 horses, but not 8, and I needed 8 of them. So I just went with this picture anyway. Um, so the next thing that Zechariah saw in his night visions, remember he had all of these the same night. And there were 4 chariots coming out from between 2 bronze mountains, and due to the increasing repetition of come forth and go forth and so forth through these 8 visions, uh, you can kind of see where things are reaching a climax. It's just like um, an adventure movie or something like that, where it's getting more and more into it, and the music picks up, and finally, you get toward the end of it, and you got William Tell Overture and the Lone Ranger singing "Hi Ho Silver," and so that's kind of where we are um, tonight with this one. Now, bronze is often associated. Um, with judgment, and the chariots were also instruments of judgment, and so it often carries this connotation in scripture. See that in Exodus 27 and Numbers 21, and some commentators, some of the guys that I read here tonight, they believe that the 4 chariots represented the 4 great kingdoms of Daniel's prophecy, but I don't see it. To me, that was a big stretch, and trying to come up with some kind of spiritualizing and meaning to this, and I didn't see it, but anyway, bronze was also used as a defense against attackers. They could make shields out of it. So perhaps the idea of impregnability is also in view here. And so some people, these commentators said, well, the color bronze was due to the rising sun because, in the first vision, they were all just coming back from something. And now in this vision, they're going out and into the east, or, from the east, and it's a rising sun and so forth. But there again, I'm not real sure that that was, and one of the commentators says, yeah, people that say this are letting their fancy and their imaginations get into play at this point. And I find that a lot of times with these people in their comments that they seem to when they can't think of anything to say, they got to say something, and so they'll come up with something then. And the mountains here, they're not identified, and some people, there's several views here that are what were the mountains. Some of them say that they were a gateway to heaven from which these agents, these chariots and their horses were coming from. And another one is that they were Mount Zion and the Mount of Olives, with the valley between them being the Kidron Valley. A third possibility is that they're parts of either side of the Mount of Olives that will split apart when Messiah returns to the earth. And so, um, who knows what they are? That's just one of those kinds of things that you know, things that make you want to go, huh? And we just don't know. And so, but always in scripture, symbolism, horses and chariots stand for the power of God, and and I think it's in this case, you'll see that also, that it stands for the power of God. And this particular vision speaks of the Lord's judgments upon the Gentile nations, both north and south, in the day of the Lord. And so the reason we're doing the north and south is we'll get into it in a little bit. So one writer said that the four chariots add the concept of divine omnipotence to the idea of divine omniscience that was established in that very first vision that Zechariah had. So, and again, we don't know. They said they were made of bronze. Well, bronze is it's an alloy of copper and tin, and the ancient counterpart to brass was bronze, and it was an alloy of copper and zinc, if I remember my metallurgy correctly from back in the day. But bronze seems to symbolize righteous divine judgment against sin, or associated somehow with that has religious connotations. Remember, the altar in the tabernacle and the temple was a brazen altar, meaning bronze, or some say no, it was copper and so forth. But there again, it was involved in atonement of sin, or some kind of thing associated with sin. So anyway, they don't name the mountains, and so we really don't know, and so we can just kind of guess. As the story progresses, it's not really important to the story at all. So verses 2 and 3, the first chariot had red horses, the second chariot black horses, the third chariot white horses, and the fourth chariot had strong dappled horses. And so the two horses pulling the first chariot were red, and then black horses pull the second chariot, white horses the third, and the dappled, or I'm not really sure what color we would call that today, uh, would be pulling the last set of chariots. And these angels, these horses and chariots, represented angels who facilitate the work of other angels, and represented by the chariots. So the colors of the horses, I don't know, they may symbolize various aspects of judgment, perhaps war and bloodshed in the case of the red horses, and famine and death for the black, and victory and triumph for the white, and plague and disease for the dappled, the spotted horses. Another view is that the horses represent various aspects of divine providence, red signifying war and bloodshed, black the consequences of war, white signifying peace and prosperity, and the spotted ones, the dappled, signifying a mixture of prosperity and adversity. So um, then a couple of writers they said, oh, these horses represent Babylon, Persia, Greece, and Rome, and I can't see that at all. I just don't see it. And but the four chariots with the different colored horses speak of I don't know, just the overall universality, I guess, if that is that a word, universality, the overall aspect of divine judgment, which could go in all directions throughout the earth. He's just sending them out, and they could go everywhere. And so we don't know, that he didn't tell us what the colors meant, if there was any significance to the colors. So um, we just don't know. And but that's what some of the writers talked about as far as what they considered the colors might have meant. So verse 4 and 5. Then I responded by saying to the angel speaking with me, "What are these, my Lord?" The angel answered me, saying, "These are the four winds of heaven that go forth from the presence of the Lord of all the earth." Now, um, once more, we see uh, the meaning of this vision is not obvious to Zechariah. But at the same time, he's not afraid to ask or not ashamed. He's not embarrassed that he doesn't know. He doesn't try to make up stuff as he goes along. And so I think there's a lesson in here for all of us. If we don't understand something in the Bible, it's okay to ask. You can ask God in prayer. You can ask by seeking answers in the scriptures. Search the scriptures and more often than not, you're going to find your answers if you search long and hard enough. You could ask a trusted mentor, your pastor, your rabbi, your whatever person that you feel like is a uh, good source for you. Uh, but be cautious about consulting the internet, okay? And I think everybody maybe knows that. Whatever you see on the internet, you really have to go and compare it to whatever it is that they say. Then you have to see how does it measure up to God's word? Is it contradictory to God's word? If it's one of those things that it's a real long stretch to get it to that point, you have to be a little bit skeptical. I have a Bible in my library. Well, it's an NIV Bible. When they first came out many years ago, one of the editors of that Bible, one of the contributors to it, he put in notes in the Bible, and the man just twisted himself into pretzels over the fact that his Jesus would not have allowed that filthy alcohol to cross his lips. And I mean, he just twisted himself all up into uh, everything so that he could prove that Yeshua never drank any kind of alcohol, and that the wine at the wedding in Cana was not really wine; it was more like Welch's grape juice, and that's ridiculous on its own. It's on its own face, but you get that from time to time where people will have a personal bias about something, and they just won't let it go and try to twist the scriptures around. Warren, you got a comment?
Yeah, I do have a comment because I just noticed that because a lot of it says in I guess it's what verse 5. It says these are the four spirits of heaven. Uh, but actually, that same word is the ruach. It means wind too. So often we talk about the four winds, you know, and so that can also be translated instead of these are uh, the the four spirits of heaven because there's no real set understanding of what four spirits of heaven would be, and if what that and that there are only four of them, because I mean elsewhere we talk about the sevenfold spirit of God,
Right,
the seven
right.
spirits of God. But so the concept of it being wind, because that's the exact same word, ruach.
Right.
Ruach means spirit, also means wind. I think seeing it as winds maybe makes more sense.
Yeah, and that's what our Tree of Life version calls it. These are the four winds of heaven. And especially then later on when they're talking about them going out into the different directions that it just does. It makes a whole lot more sense that it would be wind the I guess it could also it's as it's translated the four spirits. I don't know that I go along with that one. I'm like you, Warren. I think it makes more sense to say that it's more like that things are just scattered to the winds, as it were, and the four corners of the world, and that's the old story about where. Uh, God said that men could find the perfect woman in just about every corner of the world, and then he created the world round without any corners. So anyway, that's one of the things that when I mute everybody, then I don't hear your howls of laughter when I tell a joke. All right, so let's go ahead. Um, but that was my little preachiness there about asking questions and comparing it to the scripture. So the angel here explained the significance of the horses and their chariots. He said these are the four spiritual winds, as we talked about, of heaven, and they may refer to the angels of divine judgment or to just the power of God to accomplish what he was going to do with his judicial purposes. The things that he'd counted. We've seen before where the nations were weighed like in a courthouse, and they were charged, and then they had their trial, and then God pronounced judgment on them. And so these horses could very well have been that. Uh, and so also there, if you'll note at the end of verse 5, it says from the presence of the Lord of all the earth. Now the word that is translated Lord there is Adon, and it's a divine title. The Lord Adon it's a millennial designation that would point toward the universal rule of the Messiah over all the earth during this future kingdom age, or the millennial period of our future history. And I just thought that was kind of an interesting word. And remember, it's also where we get the word Adonai, the Lord, that we use. Anyway, Jewish people you'll use that in place of saying the four-letter tetragrammaton of God. And so I just thought it was kind of interesting that word Adon popped up here. So verse 6, the chariot with the black horses is going to the land of the north, and the white ones have gone out after them, but the dappled ones have gone out to the land of the south. All right, so we didn't get a full picture here, though. The chariot with the black horses, they go to the north from Jerusalem, and that's the direction from which most of Israel's enemy invaders descended on the promised land. Of course, you got the ones that would come and raid from Gaza or from say Edom or something like that, which are not the north or the direct south. But it said that the black horses went up north, and then they were followed by the white horses. And to me, if the black horses went out and went to the north, and the Bible says that the white horses followed them, that would mean that, okay, the white horses also went north. I found writers that said, "Oh no," when it says that they went out next, or they followed, that meant that they went west. And why would that mean that they went west? Why couldn't they have gone east? Why couldn't they have gone, I don't know, northeast or northwest or southeast, whatever. That's just kind of pulling it out there. And where the Bible clearly says they followed the black horses. So that meant that they went up north. To me, it does. Then they had the dappled horses, the spotted ones. Um, they went, they headed south. Now, what's in the south? How, you know, what countries had ever invaded Israel from the south? Well, of course, it was Egypt, and so that was another one of her enemies. So um, I don't know if we can say that, we can presume that the red horses went south also, because again, I saw writers that said that, oh no, the red horses, well, they went off to the east. Well, how do you get that? They're just making this stuff up, and because it clearly does not say where the red horses went. Didn't mention them at all. And so now, because of the geography of Canaan, all of Israel's enemies came against her either from the north or the south. And because, the Mediterranean Sea, they didn't have a whole lot of activity like, some great maritime nation coming in and attacking them from the sea. And then, of course, the Arabian Desert to their east was it was not possible to cross that because there's no water, and they would have to come in from a different direction. So, um, in fact, I've got a picture here that kind of points that out of how these northern routes would come, and you'd see the Assyrians and the Babylonians would have to follow the Euphrates up here because they had water. That's where, if you don't have water, your army can't go very far, and then they would come down here. So everything was pretty much from the north, and then of course down south, uh, that's where they would come up from Egypt and Cush and Ethiopia and so forth. All right, so uh, verse 7 said, when the strong ones went out, they requested to go to walk through the earth. And he said, go walk through the earth. So they walked throughout the earth. Now, these the strong ones, what are they? Well, they're angels. They were sent out by God to patrol the earth, as it were. And it shows here that they were not only were they willing to go out there and do that, but they were eager to. They were anxious to go and do what God had asked them to do. And so we see a little transition here in the verbiage, because if you look back at this, it says when the strong ones went out, they requested to go throughout all the earth. Okay, no one's speaking there. There's no direct quotes. But then in the second part of that, it says, he said, go. Who said go? Well, this is obviously now it's God, Adonai, saying, go. These angels had asked, can we go? Can we go? Can we go? And so he says, yeah, go, walk throughout the earth. And so we see this shift from, say, an angel talking to Zechariah, to now it's God himself who has picked up the conversation, and he's talking to these angels, says, yeah, go. And so it said that then they went out and went out through all the earth, and they were presumably executing God's judgment on the nations. And so then we have verse 8 here. It said, then he called and spoke to me, saying, look, those going toward the land of the north have given rest to my Ruach in the north country. All right, so God's wrath after being uh, going against Babylon and the wickedness there in Babylon. He's now sending these horses up to, or his agents up to the north, and they have, I guess you'd say they've assuaged, that's a nice word, assuaged God's anger to the point that he says, well, finally, my spirit is at rest, because they have the same word, the ruach. And in this case, the ruach is God's spirit and not particularly a wind. Um, and so they go up there, and he takes care of Assyria and takes care of Babylon. And so at this point, God has said, okay, that's enough. And I'm satisfied with how they went. And these two nations, these two empires have collapsed. And so I'm satisfied with that. I'm happy with that. And so my spirit is at rest, is the way that I would look at that. And um, so we can go on if any other comments on that. I think Warren had already hit the idea of being both spirit and wind, and in fact the ruach is also another word that sometimes describes uh, part of a man's soul, and so there's just lots of things that the ruach can mean. Hebrew is such a economical language that one word can mean lots of different things. All right, so verses 9 and 10. And the word of Adonai came to me, saying, take from the exiles uh, from Cheldai, from Toviyahu, and Yediyahu. Okay, I tried to pronounce those in the Hebraic way. Uh, Keldai, Toviyahu, and Yediyahu. And they have come from Babylon and go the same day, go to the house of Josiah, son of Zephaniah. And so the word of the Lord came to Zechariah, instructing him to go and take part or all of an offering that certain exiles had brought from Babylon for the restoration of the temple. And these returnees were Heldai, um, Tobiyahu, and or I don't even know how to say it in English, but Yediyahu. Okay. In I guess if you were saying it in English, it'd be Jediah and Tobiah or something. I don't know. Those names are kind of hard. So the prophet was supposed to meet these men in at the house of Josiah, the son of Zephaniah, and it's not the Zephaniah the prophet. It's another Zephaniah. That's where they were obviously staying, or evidently they were staying there. But these men were basically not further identified. We don't really know that much about who they were, or what they represented, who they represented at all. But they brought offerings from Babylon into Jerusalem for the rebuilding of the temple. And so God is telling Zechariah, take silver and gold, make crowns, and set on the head of Joshua, son of Jehozadak, the Kohen Gadol. So it's now,
Rabbi,
yeah.
just got a quick note because I did a little study on that because you said that the red horse wasn't mentioned in that going forth there, but that's not quite true because it says though it's translated in some versions as strong horse, and it didn't. When looking in the Amutzim, it's the name of the horses. They
Mm-hmm.
it's listed in when you do study the Hebrew, it says it's of a strong color, which or as a bay, that these would be like bay color. They'd be like a reddish brown. So
Mm-hmm.
so in essence, that you could see that as being when it says the strong horses, that these were bay colored horses. These were bays. They
Yeah.
were like a reddish brown color.
Yeah, I had read one of the commentators had said something similar to that the red horse, I mean the strong horse equated to the just to the red, and um but it was one of those kind of connections that I was thinking, okay, is it you got to do something with that red horse, and I guess that's as good as any. But um, it wasn't terribly clear, and so if it's not terribly clear to us, possibly we can have a little sympathy for Zechariah when he's looking at all this stuff and he's scratching his head and asking that angel, okay, what does all this stuff mean? And so it was not very clear. Of course, we know it now because what? We've already had the answers from the angel, and we've had several thousand years to study up on it. So anyway, you're right on that. That I did remember reading one of the commentaries that said that they equated the red with the strong horse. So thank you for that. All right, so Zechariah was instructed to make crowns, and it doesn't really, I mean, it was a plural word, and so how would how would he make crowns on to put on to Joshua the high priest? And how does somebody wear two crowns? And somebody else says, well, it's because they took a gold crown and connected it with a silver crown, or inside or overlaid or something, and they were actually two crowns that they put together. And in uh, we just don't know. That's just another deal of where they're trying to explain something that they don't know the answer to, and um, trying to make up something, I guess. But uh, the important part of this was that they were to take the crown and put it on the head of Joshua, the son of Jehozadak, and so why would they do that? Um, and it elevates the high priest even higher than he normally would have, because not since Melchizedek did you have a priest who is also a king. And so then later on, there was that was one of the questions that popped up with the Maccabees, because they were a family of priests, and yet they became de facto kings in a way after a short in a fashion that was kind of counter to what God had wanted for Israel. He wanted Israel actually to be a theocracy and be led by the high priest and not by a king. But the people demanded a king. So anyway, there you have the kind of a discrepancy, or not maybe a discrepancy, but just not fully explained what it was about crown or crowns. And the the thing about it is trying a crowning Joshua, the high priest, and not Zerubbabel, who was the governor. Why would they do that? Well, because they can crown their high priest, and he's a religious figure, whereas the governor was a secular figure, kin to he's the head political person all throughout Judah and Israel. And so if they had crowned him, well, what do you crown him? You crown him governor. Well, no, governors don't wear crowns. Kings wear crowns. And so this was possibly if we're trying to explain it away, that it would be a way of if you crown the Joshua the high priest, it kind of puts the priesthood and God's holiness and his plan for his people at a level higher than the governor Zerubbabel. And also it kind of protects Zerubbabel, because if they put a crown on him, then you know how these potentates are out there in the ancient Middle East, ancient Near East, that Darius over there in Persia would have said, "What? They crowned this guy king, and I never gave him the authority to be king." And so then they could have brought people down, armies down, and snatched the crown away and said, "No, no, you don't get to be king because I didn't appoint you king." So it was kind of a protection mechanism, I believe. And so, some people say, well, uh, crowning of Zerubbabel could have been misunderstood, that they were trying to carry on this Davidic line, because Zerubbabel was a descendant of King David. So if they had crowned him, then the Darius over there in Persia would have said, no, they're trying to establish a king again, and I'm just going to have to clean this up. And so, again, I think it was the possibility of trying to protect Israel from political backlash, is what it was. Seemed like. All right, I
And
don't know if
don't
anybody. Yeah,
forget, yeah, and don't forget, Rabbi, you mentioned a couple of lessons back that the Syrians had complained to Darius, because they didn't let the Syrians, because the Jews didn't let the Syrians participate in the building of the temple, that they sent a complaint to Darius
right.
about that, making all kind of stuff up, like you said, like the internet. And so that makes a lot of sense to me, especially Zerubbabel being in the line of Jesus and the line of David.
Right. Well, yeah, it was from Samaria, not Assyria. The
Yeah, I'm
people.
sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. I thought I said Samaritans. That's it.
Well, I don't know. Anyway,
The
it was from
Samaritans aren't Syrians.
the
They're not.
Samaritans. Were inbred. The Samaritans were the product of the Assyrians taking over Israel in 722, and then they imported a bunch of people from all over the world in there to assimilate and basically dilute the Jewish population into non-existence.
Okay, so I'm just referring to the people that were there in the land when the people returned back from
Yeah. and, and that would have been people from Samaria, and those people had been Jews that had been so diluted, their bloodline had been so diluted that they were considered less than half breeds by the Jews coming back from Babylon, and that's why one reason they didn't want them to assist in building the temple, because they thought that they were defiled. And then also the Samaritans showed their true colors by writing letters to Persia saying, I think at that point is Artaxerxes, but uh, to tell them that, hey, these Jews, they're just stirring up trouble over here, and they're doing all sorts they're trying to build this temple, and if they build that temple, then they're going to be worshiping their God, and just going to be all sorts of trouble for you. And that's why they shut down building the temple for 16 years. So yeah, that's you're right on that. But it was I feel a protection for Israel and or Judah, and of course for Zerubbabel that they didn't put a crown on him. And he was still, in effect, for all intents and purposes, he was the highest public official in the land outside of the temple. The high priest was a higher was he was high in a different way. You know, he was the religious guy, and Zerubbabel was the secular guy. All right, so going ahead, said, then speak to him, saying, Thus says Adonai Svaot, Behold, a man whose name is the branch will branch out from this place and build the temple of Adonai. So Zechariah was then to announce in the name of Adonai that those everybody that was around when he was pronouncing this should take note and listen up and recognize that Joshua, who Zechariah he was going to designate as branch or sprout or it's kind of a hard word for us to kind of figure out, but it was certainly prophesied in Isaiah and in Micah that the coming Messiah would be referred to as the branch. And so here he's saying, okay, Joshua, you're part of this lineage that is going to be associated with the Messiah at a future date. So the branch's kingdom would be very widespread, and he would build a temple of Adonai. And so it would be Zerubbabel, not Joshua, was God's choice to build the restoration temple, but Messiah, who Joshua prefigured, you know, he was kind of a foretype, would build the future temple for the Lord. It's Messiah that would build that future temple. So what we have here is the type in Joshua and the antitype of Yeshua that have the meaning. You know, Joshua, his name is in Hebrew is Yehoshua, and of course, the Jesus or Yeshua, his name, both of them mean the Lord saves, and so that was it's kind of a nice little touch there that God had put in there with Joshua the high priest. And so the Aramaic Targum and the Jerusalem Talmud, and there's a Midrash that all regarded this verse 12 to have messianic connotations. And so when Pilate, you remember when Pilate said, Behold the man, you know, he's introducing Yeshua out there, and he was kind of probably being a little bit sarcastic and ornery, but he says, Behold the man. He was announcing to the Jews unwittingly that Yeshua was the branch promised in this verse. And so going ahead with verse 13, he will build the temple of Adonai. He will bear splendor and sit and rule on his throne. Thus he will be a Kohen and on his throne. So a council of shalom will be between them both. Now, along with Psalm 110, this verse is probably, I don't know, one of the clearest statements in the Old Testament that this coming Davidic king would also be a priest, which, you know, up till this time we hadn't had that. And they, some writers said that, well, the audience, Zechariah's audience would have understood that the Davidic ruler, though not a priest as such, would enjoy the full support of the priesthood. So they would work closely together and so forth. So I wrote down, and I didn't put it in the slides, maybe I should have, just what they said on Psalm 110, and it's says a psalm of David. Adonai says to my Lord, sit at my right hand until I make your enemies a footstool for your feet. Adonai will extend your mighty rod from Zion. Rule in the midst of your enemies. Your people will be a free will offering in a day of your power. In holy splendors from dawn's womb, yours is the dew of our youth. Adonai has sworn and will not relent. You are a Kohen forever according to the order of Melchizedek. Your Lord is at your right hand. My Lord is at your right hand. He will shatter kings in the day of his wrath. He will judge among the nations, heaping up corpses. He will crush heads over the entire land. He will drink from a stream along the way, so his head will be exalted. So this is, pretty obvious. That's going to be it. That is a messianic prophecy as such. And so we know that Yeshua will rule and reign from Jerusalem in the millennial period, and he will be sitting there, and all of the nations of the world will come and bring gifts and offerings at Sukkot each year. And if they don't, then it's not going to rain on their country for a year, meaning their economy is going to go in the toilet. So, well, I did write that down. I forgot that I did that. Okay, so there's Psalms 110, 1-7. All right, and so just moving ahead here, last couple of verses. The crowns will be in the temple of Adonai as a memorial to. Now the name has changed just a little bit. Instead of uh, okay, what did they have before? Um, uh, Cheldai. Instead of Cheldai, they now have. They have Helim. It's a little bit different, and Tobiyahu is the same, and Yedidau is the same. But then they said to Ken, son of Zephaniah, and that's changed. See, a little bit. So. They knew all of these people. That's the same name, and I'm not real sure why the names changed, but Chen means the gracious one in Hebrew, and possibly Chen was an honorary title for Josiah, who had been the host of this, historic coronation. So we just really don't know. I don't know anyway. There were lots of comments and speculation as to why they changed the name, but nobody really, they all couched it with terms of, well, it could be, or possibly, or, this and that and the other. So they didn't know. And so, last verse here, whoops. And they said that in there that the crown was supposed to stay in the temple as a reminder, as a memorial to these guys that they had brought the gold and the silver to make the crown. And there was also something to remind the populace of their deed. So last verse here. Those who are far off will come and build in the temple of Adonai. Then you will know that Adonai Svaot has sent me to you. It will come to pass if you diligently obey the voice of Adonai your God. Okay, so somewhere along the line, I thought I saw a chat pop up, but I guess I didn't. Um, yeah, I don't know what happened to the chat. Okay, there it is. It just popped up on my screen for some reason, and I don't know why. All right, so um, it says those who are far off. Well, most of the commentaries that I have, and I read from about 5 or 6 of them every week. Um, and then those guys also have, lots of bibliographies and so forth. So I don't even know. It's hard to count up how many different writers have talked about this stuff over the years. But they always, in their view, they said, well, the temple is going to be built by Gentiles, and that the temple is not a physical temple of bricks and mortar, but it's the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Holy Spirit, which is the church of Jesus Christ. That sort of thing. So they're saying it has nothing to do with the Jews anymore. That this is strictly for those of us who are believers in Yeshua, believers in Jesus, and they kind of push the Jewishness away from them. In that it's kind of a replacement theology in the way that they talk about it and the way they interpret it. But then when you go over into Sepharia and that's a Jewish website that has all of the scriptures, and then they've got a listing of all the commentaries by um, the ancient sages and so forth. For everybody from Rashi to Abarbanel and even Ezra. Those are the main ones, along with Rambam and Ramban and it goes on. They got a bunch of those guys. So anyway, I went into there and to see what they're saying, and they didn't really ping on that too much, but the ones that did say this is talking about the Jews who were coming from Babylon into Jerusalem from their exile, and they're coming in and going to be uh, working on the temple, building on the temple, and then at that point, this verse where it says, and you will know that Adonai Svaot has sent me to you. Well, who's the me, and who is that? Well, again, it gets a little confusing because some people said, "Oh, well, then you will know that Adonai Svaot has sent me." The me to the Christian commentators, well, he's talking about the Messiah, Jesus the Messiah. Um, and other ones, more Jewishly oriented, will say, no, you will know that Adonai Svaot has sent me, Zechariah, to you. And I don't know. I've looked it over and looked it over, and in context, it seems to me that um, the idea of sent me being Zechariah is the right one, and not trying to insert Yeshua into every little thing, because he was not in every little thing. He certainly is woven into, all throughout the Bible, but there were certain things that happened that, okay, you can't say that was a picture of the Messiah or whatever, because it just wasn't. So anyway, but what I think we need to know, at the end of the day, what is important is that the building of the temple, whether it's a physical, brick and mortar temple, or if it's the temple of the body of Messiah, the people, that we need to be in a position where we follow the Lord's precepts. We follow Torah. We follow God's rules, his laws, his standard of holiness, even today. And this, this is 2,500 years after this book was written. It still talks to us today about how we should follow the Lord, and that all these things that he's talking about, they'll come to pass for us if we continue in his word and follow his word. And so that ends the class for tonight. And I didn't go but 1 minute over the 8 o'clock. So are there comments or questions now? Uh, we can either discuss them, or I can go ahead and, in fact, let me turn off the share here, so that we can go into, I can drop off of live